On today's show, we bring in the host of Locked On Lightning, Adam Denker. We're going to discuss how Florida has developed as a hockey state. There's a makeover in Tampa Bay, and both franchises are looking to be well represented in the 2026 Winter Olympics.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, guys, welcome into this special crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you once again for making both of our Locked On podcasts your first listen of the day. For everybody on the Lightning feed, let me introduce myself. My name is Armando Velez, the host of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and thankful to be once again doing another show with my dear friend here on the Locked On NHL Network, Adam Denker, for an off-season edition of the show. And today we are going to discuss the compare and contrast of the redemption stories between these two teams and their cup run and the state of hockey in the state of Florida, Tampa Bay's makeover, and whether or not they got better. And then in the final segment, we're going to discuss more about the Battle of Florida, possibly represented in the Four Nations and the Olympics. But Adam, great to be once again getting together with you. It's been a little while since we've done a crossover, since mid-April too. So it's great to be back on the record talking to you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really always very enjoyable every time you and I both get together to talk Florida hockey. And I just have to say, from everybody on the Lightning side, we were actually rooting for you. As exciting as it was, the prospect of seeing Edmonton come all the way back and possibly winning that series, it's a kind of a different feeling, being proud of what Florida hockey has become over the last really 30 years and seeing both our teams win cups in the last 10. I mean, that's really awesome. And it's just a great story. Even all the storylines going around with what the Panthers had to go through in recent years. I mean, I think we could all agree, whether you're a Lightning fan, Panther fan or not, we were all rooting at the end for Paul Maurice to get his first cup.
Yeah, and I think of for the state of Florida, and you think of for these two teams, you think the representative for the last 5 Stanley Cup Finals for them. And even before the last, even in 2015, when the Tampa Bay Lightning made the Stanley Cup Final too, for them, Stamkos and Hedman were a little younger then. Ben Bishop was the starting goalie at the time for the Tampa Bay Lightning in that year. And for the Panthers, I mean, at that time, they were just starting to figure it out, winning the division, bringing in Jaromir Jagr. But there was a little bit of a crossroads there for so many coaches, while Tampa Bay was consistent, knocking on the door over and over again. Finally, after getting over the Washington Capitals in the Eastern Conference Final, right before going to the Cup Final that year. And then, but one thing that these two teams do have in common is just their own fare of redemption stories. Not necessarily the same as far as what round they lost in. Obviously, both of them had very heartbreaking losses after winning the President's Trophy. Panthers in round 2 against the Tampa Bay Lightning, which honestly, Adam, that was the best thing that ever happened to the Florida Panthers, getting swept, the coaching change, trading Jonathan Huberdeau for Matthew Tkachuk, and then crazy to think, even for the Lightning, getting swept by Columbus in 2019, the year before the bubble, which, crazy enough, we're recording this 4 years, after that 5 overtime game between Columbus and Tampa Bay in the bubble, which the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to win that series, though, in that one. But still, even their fair share of redemption stories and just how losses can just bring teams together. I mean, even the Edmonton Oilers, their media team released the locker room video of them after losing the cup to the Florida Panthers, and you hearing the ceremony then. And it just reminds me, even though there's no footage of the Panthers and them in the locker room after they lost to Vegas, you still have a little bit of that feeling of the agony of defeat and how it makes a team so much stronger. And to think that after the Tampa Bay Lightning got swept there, 3 straight cups and winning 2 of them, and just the Vasilevsky also being on another level between that too, and just the star power, a great third line that they had there, even though they lost them after the fact. I mean, redemption at its finest between when you think about these two teams, even though they aren't necessarily the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with every single thing you just said. And I was saying it on my show recently as we were doing our rewatch of the 2004 Stanley Cup run, and what parallels were there for the '04 Lightning as they got eliminated in the previous year, leading up to winning their first cup. What parallels lie there between them and, the 2020 Lightning? And I was saying that really, I think the only thing that maybe equally matches the thrill of winning a Stanley Cup, and maybe a little bit more obviously recent for you, you could relate to this, is seeing the evolution of the team over the last couple of years, whether it be a span of 3 or just the span of a couple of months, seeing how a team has grown, whether just in character or even their roster. I mean, you made a great example there with your guys getting swept by the Lightning just a couple of years ago, coming back, trading I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Huberdeau won the Hart that year, right?
He
And
got third.
okay, so
Fourth, excuse me, fourth.
Yeah, but he was, at the time, a lot of people thought that the Panthers were crazy to trade him away for Matthew Tkachuk, and everybody saw it from the initial game, and especially in the playoffs, what kind of different outlook Tkachuk brought to this team. And I even said it in the first matchup all the way back then when the Lightning played the Panthers. This is a different Panthers team, and you've seen it over the last couple of years. And yeah, losing to the Lightning was definitely the best thing for you, especially for my Lightning. The best thing for them was losing to Columbus. And 3 cups have come out of it. And I think a lot of people this year going into, not to get ahead of ourselves, but going into the season, I think the expectation for a lot of people around the NHL when they look at the Panthers is a repeat, which is a crazy thing to say when you think about where this team was not too long ago.
Yeah, and let's just get this part out of the way, where this could, if it isn't already the best rivalry in the NHL, I mean, you could argue that maybe Devils Rangers, depending on how the Devils do this year with their improved roster, with now getting their goaltender and Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen, even though they got Jake Allen in the trade deadline last year. Calgary's rebuilding, Anaheim's rebuilding, so there's not really that big rivalry there too. Seattle's still a wild card with them and creating a new rivalry with Vancouver too. And to think that, going back to the whole Huberdeau trade, he was the least of the Panthers' issues in their first round matchup in 2021. He led the team in points for that round. I mean, it's crazy to also think that their goalie tandem from 2021 is the same as coming into 2024-25 with Chris Driedger coming back too, and they rotated all 3 goalies in that series. It's crazy to think that a 19-year-old Spencer Knight was making his postseason debut too, but here we are even after that with a Stanley Cup championship for the Panthers there. And the whole bunch of changes that they had to do even then to their defense, and also signing guys on the cheap and wanting to come here to win for the goal of winning too. And obviously the state income tax situation here is I'm going to acknowledge that it's there. I'm not going to we can't deny it. It is an advantage, and we're not going to apologize for it neither when it comes to signing guys. I mean, thankfully that got them to retaining the likes of a Sam Reinhart. I mean, you could argue the same thing for when the Tampa Bay Lightning signed guys like an Eric Chernak, even Mikhail Sergachev before he got traded, Anthony Cirelli, the same thing, all that jazz too. So it really helps the continuity part of this. The only question as far as the Panthers is like, what's that going to do as they age? The Lightning, they've had a few years now of getting that, of what now this next phase. So now the Panthers, it's now a big question mark. And it's also excitement to see what the next step will be too, and how they adapt from here going forward.
Yeah, real quick to get back on your point about the best rivalry in hockey, I think the only one that may edge out this one is probably Vegas and Colorado, just Maybe. Because those teams are just, when they're both healthy, they're just like superstars, and Vegas is penchant for just trading for the best player at the deadline every single year now, and not the only team I think in recent years that has cared less about the salary cap than the Lightning has been Vegas, and really, I think though there is a lot to say about the Florida rivalry scene right now. Like both these teams, or even the Lightning, they've lost some leadership here and there. They've had to sacrifice here and there for the sake of cap space, and you guys as well, and with Florida, and we both know that, the toughest thing to do after winning a cup, and I mean, you even said it to me, I think before Game 7, or even in the midst of the Stanley Cup final, that it's going to be really tough to sign all these guys back to contracts. Everyone's making a lot of money, and that's really the double-edged sword there. You want guys to play well, but at the same time, you got to pay people. That's just the reality of the situation. But I think really, if the Panthers come back and repeat this year, I mean, I don't see how you could really look at any other rivalry in the NHL and say that's better. Especially, I mean, you referenced New York and Jersey, but Jersey hasn't won since the early 2000s. The Rangers have gone longer without winning a cup. So really, I think, this is the premier rivalry in the NHL right now.
Yeah, and same thing with Toronto and Montreal. Montreal is still trying to get out of rebuild mode, while Toronto's still trying to find their way. And even in their most recent playoff series, it was a Montreal win over them in a 3-1 comeback just a few years ago. But we're going to switch gears a little bit to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about the changes in Tampa Bay and also the changes in Florida. And we're going to discuss more about whether the Tampa Bay Lightning actually did get better in this offseason. And we'll give the floor to Adam on this one for sure. We're going to discuss that more next here on this crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But the playoffs have been behind us for a few months now, and now we have fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And once again, I'd like to thank you guys all for making Locked On Panthers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective of all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insights on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Back on this crossover edition with myself, Armando Velez, and Adam Denker of Locked On Lightning, here to discuss more about the Battle of Florida and the rivalry between these two teams. But obviously, there have been a lot of changes for the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially this season. There was a whole bunch of questions on whether Steven Stamkos was going to resign. And I was actually in the room on April 29th, the final game of that series between these two teams, when John Cooper said that Steven Stamkos belongs here. And honestly, from the tone of the room, I was very confident that he was coming back. But based on the moves, even when they traded Sergachev for more cap space, I was thinking, maybe, but no. Ended up being lowballed, signs with Nashville, but a little bit of changes that came to the roster for the Tampa Bay Lightning, which brought back Ryan McDonough, brought in Jake Gensel, got a little younger there, brought in JJ Moser to the mix there, and also brought in Connor Geekie, first round pick, as a part of that Sergachev trade. So very promising young prospect, got a little younger there. So and also the losses for the Tampa Bay Lightning, Anthony Duclair signing with the Islanders, Matt Dumba, obviously for that. But obviously the big deal is Steven Stamkos, the leadership that's going to be missing there. But also, when you think about everything for the Lightning, I have to ask you, did they get better? Because I feel like they did. There's a part of me that thinks they did.
Yeah, I think that they got better. I think they got a little bit more dynamic. It's unfortunate anytime you lose a leader, especially one of the magnitude of Steven Stamkos. 16 seasons in Tampa Bay, 11 of those spent as the captain. The magnitude of his contributions to Tampa Bay on the ice and off, you really, we don't have enough time in the podcast to really sit here and talk about it, but he has really done a lot for this franchise, and he'll be surely missed. But at the same time, it's been no secret in Tampa Bay that both sides were very far apart for quite some time on reaching a deal. And then as we got closer to the free agency period, you start to hear rumblings about an extension for Hedman. And I even came out and said that, you know, if we're hearing extension rumors about Hedman, that regardless if they're true or not, there has to be some sort of worry for Lightning fans that most likely a deal is not going to get made at this point. And as we all saw the day of the really within hours of free agency starting, he gets a deal in Nashville, which, you know, good luck to him, and hopefully everything goes well over there. But it benefits the Lightning, you know, like you said, they get Jake Getzel. Only I think it was actually like 2-3 hours after he signed, they get Getzel in return. So there was your backup plan right there. They signed Cam Atkinson a couple of days later. Like you said, they picked up JJ Moser and Connor Geekie in the trade for Mikhail Sergachev, sending him to Utah. So yeah, you get a little bit more of a dynamic team, which we all know, you know, Stamkos, as talented as he was, his style of play didn't really allow the Lightning to do that. But I think really at the end of the day, you're preparing for not only next season, but you're preparing for the next 5 years. And I think that's really the important thing here for Tampa Bay with the lack of draft capital that they have had over the last 5. You're really starting to get ready and for the next era of Lightning hockey. You know, you're probably going to get maybe 5 more years out of Hedman, if you're lucky. We all know, Armando, that, you know, even though, you know, you take the age of a defenseman and then you add 5 more years to that, and that's really how old they are, just because of the physicality of the position. And when you look at, you know, what the Lightning got, especially Connor Geekie, the 11th overall pick in his draft year, I mean, that cannot be understated how big of a trade piece that was. And for Julien BrisBois to go out and get that guy, and you know, we're already talking now, he might be up this year. If all goes well, he might even start on opening night, which is huge. 20 years old, starting on the 4th line, 11th overall pick. I can't probably Braden Point. I mean, he was a late draft pick, so was Coach. So maybe we have to go all the way back to Hedman. The last time we really got a big time draft pick like that, and you know, all the potential that lies there. But I think this team really got better. I think though the issue that lies with this team, as with any team, they look good on paper, but there's a lot of ifs involved, and not so much cap space. Unfortunately, the Lightning will start the season with a little over $700,000 in cap space. Really not much you could do there. I've said maybe they'll make a deal or two throughout the course of the season, if not at the trade deadline, maybe move some contracts around. But so far, so good. And I really think, you know, I'm a little overzealous in my prediction or my hopes for this team. I truly think, especially with what we've seen with Boston and you know, the rest of the division, other than your guys, I think this division is wide open. I think 2 and 3 is up for grabs in the Atlantic. I think, and I'm sure you could agree with me on this as well, I don't think anyone's afraid of Toronto right now. I don't think that really, you know, you look at that team and what they've had to address over the last couple of years. And they still just refuse to go out there and get a goaltender. I know a lot of people said, and a lot of us expected that they were going to go after Markstrom. That wasn't the case. He ends up in Jersey. And I think that, you know, as long as this team plays the way that their roster dictates the talent level, the Lightning could make a move for the second spot in the Atlantic Division. And if you get a phenomenal Vasilevsky, which you got from the playoff series against your guys, and a slow start from your guys, you know, being Stanley Cup champs and having, believe it or not, literally and figuratively, the Stanley Cup hangover is a real thing. Yeah. And so if you guys get off to a slow start, we might be talking in the mid-November about the Lightning being in first place in this division.
Yeah, and also think about that big Bobrovsky save on Matt Dumba in Game 2, where when it was tied, like that was a very big turning point of that series, and who knows what could have happened there after the fact. But I also think about something else when it comes to whether or not to pay Stamkos at the time, and also maybe a little bit of hindsight 2020. Just looking at the front office confidence ranking from The Athletic, Tampa Bay was ranked third, but I also think about where Pittsburgh was the last team, the team before to win back-to-back cups, and they were paying Malkin and Letang to make Crosby happy. So this isn't a situation of paying Stamkos to make other guys happy too. So it's a little bit of, obviously it's not a big three, and well, you could say that it's a big three if you include the goaltender with Hedman, Stamkos there, and even if you want to put a point there, but still, it's not a matter of just trying to pay guys and then really having to go scorched earth, because Pittsburgh will have to go scorched earth. We still don't know whether there's no signs of Tampa Bay going scorched earth anytime soon because of the fact that they didn't pay Steven Stamkos. So maybe that's the thing when it comes to that. But for the Panthers, it's really about them now not having to put themselves into a position. If they pay Aaron Ekblad a long-term deal, then they're probably going to have to put themselves in a position one day to eventually go scorched earth. Then after they give him a big extension, so because they still have a decision to make about him, Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe, and even possible guys who could be victims of cap clearing trades like an Etu Lustarin and Evan Rodriguez, Spencer Knight, because we saw a cap clearing trade in Ryan McDonough when he was the one of the years that they after they lost the cup to Colorado and then brought him back, we saw how that identity changed too. So it's really about evaluating and say, will this hinder the future? And that's really the question for the in the Panthers in the Panthers life cycle as far as contention, which their window is still very much open too. So that's really what hopefully Bill Zito is trying to avoid.
Yeah, I think, just from recent experience and seeing how the Lightning had to contend, it's, even though the timeline was a little shorter with them due to how weird the seasons were, with everything, I'm curious to see how Florida does with the workload this year, especially Bobrovsky. He kind of trailed off there at the end of the series against Edmonton, but just a real quick question thrown your way for my listeners. Where do you see Bobrovsky this year? Are you going to see more of kind of Vezina level type guy, or are you expecting a kind of a fall off here early on in the season, especially?
It's crazy because even though he's won a cup, his attitude going from game to game is still the same. He's just very level-headed, focused, and he's just gonna take everything one at a time. I don't think his preparation is going to change just because he won a cup for him. So do I expect Vezina levels? I wouldn't say so, but I would expect maybe around like 55 to 60 starts there. You do have to see what you got in Spencer Knight, because this is going to be the last year that he will be waivers exempt right before, and their contracts expire at the same time. So you got to see what you got. At least by next year, you got to see Spencer Knight getting more of a workload. So, but still, at least for now, you got to do right by your $10 million goalie and still give him a good majority of the starts. So I would say maybe around like 55 to 60, but they're gonna Robbie Tallis, the goaltending coach, is gonna be very strategic about rest. I mean, hell, he told him to stay away from the rink the day before Game 7, too. So that was a really tough decision to see, and people thought that Bobrovsky was rattled. Turned out he wasn't. So look to be the best decision for him. So he's gonna definitely for him. He's going to be prepared one way or the other for him. But speaking of goaltenders, speaking of the teams too, between Tampa Bay and Florida, there's also an opportunity for these multiple guys on the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning to actually join forces in international play. So we are going to transit. This is going to give us a good time to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss about the Battle of Florida and the opportunity for them to be represented in the Four Nations Face-Off and the 2026 Winter Olympics. We're going to continue that conversation on the other side here on this crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. Third and final segment here on this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. Thank you once again for making both of our Locked On podcasts your first listen of the day here on the show. And Adam, and this is my listeners know that I've had so much Olympic fever. I've been if I'm not at my day job, I was glued to my TV, especially Olympic Gold Zone with Scott Hansen, Andrew Siciliano, and Jack Hollinsworth. As we're recording this right now, the closing ceremonies is on as I'm watching Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg their rap to introduce the LA games. But even though there was that pass down from Paris to LA, my mind is on Milan for 2026 for the Olympics there. And also, it's going to be a more favorable time this time around versus what we had in Beijing. And the NHL is going back this time, as promised, thankfully, this time around. It's going to be the first time since the 2014 games. This will be hopefully Alexander Barkov's second Olympic Games for him. But for the Tampa Bay Lightning, Julien BrisBois is going to be an assistant GM. John Cooper is going to be the head coach there. But some of the projected lineups that we saw that we're seeing for both the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Florida Panthers as far as their international teams. USA has Jake Gensel and Matthew Tkachuk as far as that. Canada has Sam Reinhart, Braden Point, and ... Steven Stamkos, former Lightning there. So maybe a little bit there could be some awkwardness between him and Julien BrisBois on the international team. Sweden projected lineup based on NHL.com is Victor Hedman and Gustav Forsling. And Finland, their projected lineup has all four Finns on the Florida Panthers. Maybe a little bit of recency bias from the Cup run, but hey, we'll take it as far as the Florida Panthers. And this, I'm especially happy for Anton Lundell, a young guy who's really grown into his game in these last two playoffs, especially really for him, it really started in that second round series against the Toronto Maple Leafs back in 2023. But Battle of Florida is looking really good as far as representation as far as on paper too. Coming into next year, not next year, but the year after, in 2026. But first, before that, we do have the Four Nations face-off going on, replacing the All-Star game. And thank goodness, because All-Star games have just become pretty stale.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I actually watched an All-Star game, if I'm being completely honest. I think I caught it by accident a little bit last year. But I'm super excited that the NHL is back in the Olympics, really where they belong. I always tell people the biggest heartbreak I ever had in hockey was Crosby's overtime goal against Team USA back in Vancouver. I'm still not over it. And I think that, those are the kind of moments that the NHL needs to have if they continue to want to grow, as I think we all agree that they desperately want to do. And just, I think that is, if I remember, when I had Corey Perry on Locked On Lightning a couple of years ago when he first signed, and I actually spoke to him about it outside of the episode, and I asked him what was a bigger moment for you, playing in the Olympics and winning a gold or winning a cup? And he said winning a gold. I mean, it's, yeah, you grow up dreaming of holding Lord Stanley, but winning a goal for your country, that's something that, you can't replicate that. And it really shows how revered really the Olympics are to all these guys. And I can't wait to see really what level of hockey they really turn it on to, because I think we're going to see a different level in the Olympics and even in the Four Nations. I think that a lot of the teams are going to be nervous. They don't want their guys going out on in a meaningless game to go out there and pedal to the metal, especially if you're in the middle of a playoff run there in the middle of the season. But I mean, it's really, that's the bread and butter of the NHL, and they can't. We can't see them go away from that. You got to have nations, and really that's the way to do it. So I'm really excited for it, and I'm excited to see what Lightning players, when it's all said and done, are in it, and even in the Olympics. I hope something can happen then with the Russian guys, because it would be a travesty if we can't see Vasilevsky and Kucherov and some of the talented Russian players around the league, even if they play under the Olympic banner, get their shot in the Olympics by then. But I'm really excited for that. And it's one of those things where it can't come soon enough.
Yeah. And Thomas Botch, the head of the Olympic Committee, IOC, spoke about what Russia has to do in order to be considered a delegation there. If you want to listen to that interview with Mike Tirico, it's available on YouTube. I was able to watch that just a few days ago too. So, and also for Russia, let's not forget, there's Vasilevsky on one side of the Battle of Florida, Bobrovsky on the other side. But if I had to guess, Vasilevsky's the starter over Bobrovsky. I'm not gonna be that biased towards the Panthers, but also there's some challengers too for the goaltending position.
Yeah.
Ilya Sorokin, Igor Shesterkin there too. But you also got on the Lightning side of things for skaters, Nikita Kucherov there too for Russia that has a chance to be part of that team. Too, so that's a very exciting part of that. So hopefully, obviously, it's not in their control whether of everything of whether they are a delegation. So hopefully they still have a chance to at least be part of the games. Obviously, they still were in the Summer Olympics, but for the Panthers side of things, I mean, it's crazy because I don't think Paul Maurice needs to be part of a coaching. If he's going to be part of a coaching staff on an international level, I think he would want to be the head honcho. I don't think you're going to put Paul Maurice in a position to be an assistant there. So I think for me, I'm personally okay with him not being part of that of the Canadian staff there. So hey, when you think about just the resumes of both just Canada and US, especially as two Americans guys talking, I mean, you have Mike Sullivan with the USA, Bill Guerin, the GM for Team USA. There, I mean, there's just so much to look forward to. I mean, you on the American side, Austin Matthews, both Kachuk brothers too, the Hughes brothers, Florida natives too. So that's very exciting for just the talent that's showcased. And I think about this, and I also think about it as someone who follows golf. Scotty Scheffler wins a lot lately, but you've never seen him really like cry too much. I mean, he did for like his Masters win, but then in just a regular term, but then when you see the Olympics and then the flag going up, you see the tears like really bawling out. That's just something so different versus everything else.
It just hits different. I mean, to quote Noah Lyles, the gold-winning track star for Team USA, you could find he was. For those of you who don't know, he was making fun of the NBA for saying that they're world champions, and I thought that was
in 2020. Yeah,
that was great. And he finally, the Team USA actually basketball tweeted back to him when they won gold and said, "Are we world champions now?" And yeah, I mean, to have world champion on your resume is just totally different when it's actually on the world stage. It hits different. So, it really is something special. Like I said, when I interviewed Corey Perry, I mean, he said it himself. It's something that you can't replicate. And it's just a great feeling.
Yeah, like I said on my show, I'll say it again for your listeners. Alexander Barkov has an opportunity, something that Teemu Selanne, Jari Kurri, and Saku Koivu have never done, is win a Stanley Cup as a champion from Finland and also captain a gold medal team too in the Olympics. So that is a big opportunity for Sasha Barkov there in 2026. So big chance for him there, and something that I'm personally excited for. But Adam, this was great once again doing another crossover with you, my friend. Very thankful to once again do this and also to discuss more about the Battle of Florida and just Florida hockey period when it comes to just the growth of the game in this state that I especially love too. But tell everybody on my feed where they can follow you online, my friend.
You can follow me over at DenkyDank, DENKYD8NK. After this week, actually, I will be stepping away from Locked On Lightning. I received a really good offer from the Believe Network, and excited to start over there covering the Lightnings. I'll be covering on a show called Believe in Lightning with Adam Denker. And don't worry, people, the Adam and Armando content won't stop. We will definitely be doing some crossovers there. So really excited to be continuing our work there, just on a different platform. But if you guys want to come over and follow me over there, go ahead. And I'm excited to get started. And for all my listeners on Locked On Lightning, go ahead and follow Armando. I mean, you already know him already. You're probably sick of him by now. But listen, it's going to be a great season for both Florida teams. And, there's going to be no shortage of content. But even if you're not sick, even if you're sick of Armando, tell them where they could follow your work, all your great work, because I mean, you got your work cut out for you, my friend. You are covering a Stanley Cup champion going for a repeat. I mean, that's no easy task. Trust me. I lost years off my life going through 3 Stanley Cup finals. So
it's so worth it. They can follow me at Monoman12, follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers, and obviously Locked On Panthers anywhere they listen to podcasts. And even though you are walking away from the Locked On Network, which is the reason why we're having this crossover in the first place, too, by the way, for the listeners, and for us too, our communication off the record will not stop. But on the record, I'm hoping definitely to have you back on very soon, and I'm very, very looking forward to that. So, my friend, virtual handshake going your way, and thank you for everything for these last few years, my friend. And
I appreciate it. It's been a great ride here at Locked On, and I'm excited to take the next step in my professional career. And like I said, there are plenty of crossover podcast for us in the future, I see. So it's definitely not the end of an era, just the start of a new journey. So
no doubt, my friend. Best of luck, dude.
Thank you.